Now, my understanding is that based on the timeline produced in the institutional report, that you and the mayor had a call with Solicitor General Sylvia Jones on February 9, and we talked a little bit about that. And my understanding was that the purpose of the call was to ask Ontario to provide resources to the Ottawa Police Service. Is that right?
That's right.
To provide OPP, to facilitate OPP officers. Is
That's
that right? Okay. And what was the response for that request?
I recall the minister saying that this was something the chief should be dealing with the OPP commissioner on, and elected officials should not be getting involved in this.
Okay. And in that call, was the issue about the truckers' insurance and CVOR certificates also discussed?
I think it was discussed in a general way about what other things the province could do to help police and the protest, or put pressure on the protesters. But again, I believe the minister said that this was a law enforcement issue and it should be dealt with by law enforcement.
So did the province offer any tangible assistance?
Not with respect to insurance and CVOR. They declined to look at that. The deputy minister, Lori, I forget her last name, you had mentioned her in one of the meetings.
Yes.
And I know Lori, my apologies to her, but she was the deputy minister. Lori LeBlanc. I believe she's retired now, but she was the deputy minister of Ministry of Transportation. And she was on a call where that was specifically with the other deputy ministers, not this call, where that question was specifically posed to her, and she basically said that she'd have to go away and get back to us, but never did.
Okay. So my understanding is that you also took part in what were called tripartite meetings, and these took place on February 7th, 8th, and 10th. Is that right?
That's right.
And did you participate in all three calls?
I did.
Okay. And my understanding is these were intended to be meetings of all three levels of government: municipal, provincial, and federal. Is that right?
That's right.
And my understanding is that generally Minister Blair, Minister Mendicino, yourself, the mayor, Deputy Minister Rob Stewart, and some others joined those calls. Is that right?
That's right.
Do you recall who else would have been on those calls other than the people I mentioned?
From the provincial level, there were no elected officials, I seem to recall. They didn't attend. I think Mayor de Tomaso might have been on one or two of those calls. He was the deputy minister of at the Solicitor General, I believe.
My understanding is that he was in the situational awareness calls, but not in the tripartite.
Yeah, that's I thought he was in the tripartite, but I'm not sure. He may have been. But I don't think anyone else from the province was there. It was all federal and us.
Okay. And do you know why? My understanding is that Premier Ford was invited to participate in these meetings and declined. Or is that your understanding as well?
I know he declined, but I don't know why.
Okay. And so I'm going to take you to one of the readouts from that meeting. It's SSM-CAN-NSC, ending in 2676. And so this is a readout from one of those tripartite meetings. It looks to be the last one on February 10. And there we see people's initials. BB is Bill Blair, my understanding. JW, Jim Watson. MM, Marco Mendicino. And if we go to the second page, it looks like your contributions are redacted. And on the second page, Mayor Watson says, we would like to get MTO more involved, put pressure on insurance companies. Oh, sorry, just up. Yeah, there we are. We would like to get MTO more involved, put pressure on insurance companies. It was a disappointing answer from the province. Yet they are always setting up blitzes on the 400 series highways to check tires, etc. So my understanding is that this is in relation to the call that took place the day before on February 9?
Yes.
Okay. And was this in relation to the ask about the commercial insurance that they had declined to get involved?
Yeah, and other possible regulations that governs heavy truckers or trucking companies. And I don't know if it was the meeting before. I don't have it in front of me, but it was at one of the one of the meetings with the deputy ministers that we had federally and provincially, but it was very close to that.
And so in terms of other regulations, were these other regulations that the city was asking specifically, saying, you know, this regulation, that, can you look into that? Or were you simply saying, can you look at what you have in your toolbox available to assist?
It was exactly that. It was, what do you have that can help us in your toolbox under existing legislation and regulations? That was the specific request.
Okay, and the answer was this should not be dealt with at the political level?
Well, there were two answers from the minister, from the deputy minister. It was, I'll get back to you. I think she felt kind of blindsided at that meeting because no one told her in advance that she was going to be asked. And I think it was asked by one of her federal colleagues, actually, because I think the deputy minister of transport at the federal level looked, and they didn't have anything that could help us that was relevant because it's all mostly provincially regulated. And the question was posed to Laurie LeBlanc, and I think she seemed to be a little miffed that she got put on the spot and basically said, I'll get back to you, I'll look into it, and never did. With Minister Jones, it came up in a general way, but the position she took as Solicitor General is, this is police chief to commissioner to police chief, and that's where this should be dealt with, not through us.